So I have to say, anytime when they're in the beginning announcements, they say that attendance is a little low, and I'm the one that's stating, I tend to think it might be for me, but our lives are supposed to be centered around Christ and around the sacrifice that was given on our behalf. And usually it is. We come to services and we participate in some capacity, and we do some of the things that we know are responsible to do. And what I wanted to talk about for a moment is just our kind of who we are while we're doing that. Have you ever been driving down a long stretch of road, and when you reach the end, you wonder, well, how did I make it there, right? The last 15 minutes, I just can't seem to remember what happened between that time period. And clearly, you made the drive, you got there. But it kind of was like you're in more of a daze, right? We're so used to doing certain things for so long and driving the same roads that we miss everything that's going on in the process. We're just getting there. You're not asleep. Sometimes it's because we're distracted with other things. I think we do this more in life than we consider. We all like to think that we're in control of everything that's going on, but a lot of times we tend to coast from situation to situation, never really being involved in what we were doing, or never really, sinking our heart into it or truly understanding what we're doing. We just kind of get there. And I think that it is a problem that we have to really pay attention to, especially being Christians. I tell my wife all the time, I run into a lot of people, it seems like in my line of work, where there are people who have a cause that they're so focused on, right? And have you ever seen somebody that they've got a cause, and it's they eat it, they breathe it, they sleep it, it's everything that they do. It literally consumes them and everything about their life. They talk about it to everybody that they come into contact with, and it's just, frankly, it's who they are, right? It's what they are. They'll stop at nothing to make sure that their cause is taken care of. And it's refreshing to see that level of dedication. But we typically see it outside of the church. We don't see it inside of the church. We don't see it with ourselves or with other Christians. Our focus tends to be on the worldly aspects. And while they're great to have these causes out there, we have to make sure that we are truly focused on what our responsibility is in this life. And that's to follow Christ. My dad, I think it's been about 15 years, maybe a little longer than that. He's been playing in this Pops orchestra. Maybe longer than that. I'm getting old. And every Thursday night they meet. He has to drive up to Cincinnati. Every Thursday night, he's done this for more than 15 years. And it's dedication. He loves it. He loves to think about it. He loves to practice. I don't know why I couldn't practice that much, but anyways, they love to practice. But, that's kind of what I think we need to focus on in our Christian lives, is making sure that we have the level of dedication that it deserves. That we're doing the things that Christ would want us to do. So when we came to church this morning, and frankly even tonight, are we really worshiping God? Individually, are we really worshiping God? We go through this checklist of all the things. I showed up. I smiled at everybody, and I shook some hands, and everybody was happy. I sung along when the singing was going on. I definitely bowed when we prayed. And I did take the Lord's Supper. I did all of the things associated with it, and I did give. So, I met the criteria for being a Christian. And the problem is Christianity is not a checklist. It's who we are. It's what we do. It's our lifestyle. It's supposed to be everything that we are about. When people talk to us, they should think something about we're maybe a little different because we follow a different path. We don't do the same things. We don't react the same ways. We allow ourselves to be more devoted to Christ. I remember when I was a teenager, I used to tell my mom and dad, and this is when I was younger, maybe 11 or 12, and They were forcing me to go to church every time. And I used to tell them, you can make me go, but you can't make me like it. And it's sometimes that happens with us as we become adults and as we go through our worship services, is we're just taking up a seat in a pew. We're just existing, but we're not thriving. You have to ask yourself, and this is something I have started doing in the last couple weeks. Later on in the day, I'll ask myself, what was the lesson about? What was talked about? What did I get from it? What did we study about during the Bible study? Was there anybody mentioned during the services that maybe needs extra prayers that I didn't think about, or that I didn't am I paying attention to what's going on? And the big one, the one that I think tends to escape most of us is, do I remember taking the Lord's Supper? Not just did I take it, but do I remember what it's about and why I took it, and what the sacrifice was all about, and really how it should impact our lives? I think the one thing we have to remember is that we can't put our spiritual lives into autopilot and expect that we're going to make it, and expect that we're going to arrive there the way we're supposed to arrive there. We need to look at our lives and make sure that we're not overlooking sin. Make sure that we understand and we check ourselves against the Bible, and make sure that we know what we're doing. Guarding ourselves against going through the motions of worship. I was reading through something I was kind of just reading up on here over the last couple of weeks, is actually with David and Bathsheba. And it's going to be 2 Samuel 12. We're going to look through a couple of the first 6 or 7 verses there. And the Lord sent Nathan to David, and he came to him and said to him, there were 2 men in a certain city, the one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very many flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing but one little ewe lamb, which he had brought. And he brought it up, and it grew up with him and with his children, and it used to eat of his morsel and drink from his cup and lie in his arms. And it was like a daughter to him. Now there came a traveler to the rich man, and he was unwilling to take one of his own flock or herd to prepare for the guest who had come to him. But he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for the man who had come to him. Then David's anger was greatly kindled against the man, and said to Nathan, as the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die, and he shall restore the lamb fourfold, because he did this thing, and because he had no pity. Nathan said to David, you are the man. And I want to stop there, because, of course, the ideas of the sin that David had committed with Bathsheba. And have you ever been in one of those situations where you're talking to somebody and you're trying to point out something and they're just not getting it, or they're just looking through you, and you just want to clap your hands real loud in their face like, pay attention, listen, focus? I can only think that this is what Nathan was doing at the time. He was just ready to smack in his face. Listen to me, you're not paying attention. Because clearly David was the person who had the problem. And even a man who had so much going on in his life didn't see the error in his own light, in his own way. And I think that tends to happen when we go through life coasting. What I want to encourage you to think about, do we think that Christ went through the motions when he lived his entire life focused on doing his Father's will? Do we think Christ went through the motions when he was hanging on the cross and he was suffering for our sakes? The fact that at any point in time he could have ended it all and stopped it. I just don't think that he went through the motions. I think that you can read and see the level of dedication he had for us and what he did for us. I want to challenge you all to think about your lives and what you do, and look for opportunities to throw yourself into the gospel and to be involved in whatever it is, and to make it who you are and what you're about, so that people recognize it when they look at you and when they talk to you, and they hear it in your voice, the desperation of how important it is that everybody know about Christ. I want to challenge everybody to think about that As Christians, we have a responsibility to ourselves and to everybody we come into contact with to let them know that we're different and why. And I want to encourage you tonight, if there's anybody who has anything that they need to get off their shoulders or that they need to repent of or ask for help, there's not a better place to do it than tonight. You can come forward as we stand and sing.